be very clear on how you build things, and then outsource it to China. Go to a factory, go over there, go to Shenzhen, and tell them exactly the specs that you want and have them only manufacture your stuff. Why manufacture in the United States when it seems so much more expensive to do? Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Nikonomics. Today we have Alex Forbes. He's the owner of Lane 17 Cabinet Company, based in Cleveland, Ohio. Alex founded this company 8 years ago, but right before COVID, they pivoted into cabinet manufacturing. And his company it's really unique in that they manufacture all of their cabinetry here in the United States. They're not importing cabinets from overseas and cheaper markets. Alex talks about his reasons for this. He talks about his obsession with quality. And he also talks about how their biggest challenge to growth right now is not demand. They have more demand than they know what to do with. It's an answer that I think will surprise you and cause you to really think about your strategy as you grow your business. Well, this year, his business is going to do between $1.5 and $2 million. And over the next 5 years, his goal is to get it to a $5 million business. I have no doubt that Alex is going to get there. Listen, if you love sweaty, US-based manufacturing businesses, then this episode is for you. And if you like it and enjoy this episode, please like, subscribe, share with a friend. But with that, let's get into the episode. All right. We are in. Alex, welcome to Nikonomics. Super stoked to have you here.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on.
In a sentence or briefly, tell us what you do and how you make money.
So right now I own and operate Lane 17 Cabinet Company. We're based out of Cleveland, Ohio. We design, manufacture, and install, if it's locally, custom cabinets. Focus more on the higher end, so kitchens, baths, closets, things like that. We're just focusing on residential, so that's my main thing right now.
Can you help me understand? First of all, I wish I was handy, but I'm not. We had our kitchen remodeled 2 years ago. And when we had the contractor come in and remodel the kitchen, they were like, oh, you should get these cabinets. We'll order them from China. It's going to take a couple weeks for them to arrive. Once they're here, we'll install them. So they did all the measurements beforehand and then custom ordered them. But it sounds like that's not what you do. You're not going in, doing a remodel, ordering them from China, and then installing them. You manufacture them locally.
Yep. So we're based out of Cleveland, Ohio area. We source everything locally. We manufacture. We're not a contractor or like a general contractor. So we won't go in. If you needed your kitchen remodeled, you would only engage us, or maybe your builder would have engaged us on just the cabinetry scope. So we don't demo existing kitchens. We don't do the flooring, tile, counters. It's just manufacturing cabinets. That's a little bit rare. Historically, you've either imported or there's massive manufacturing operations that just have dealer networks that sell through dealers. And that would be like somebody your builder would go through. So we recognized that, I think with the onset of just social media, the internet, HGTV, Pinterest, right? All of a sudden there's trends, there's all these things that you can do with cabinets and interior design that before the internet, you just go to your builder, maybe go to Home Depot and you get what they're offering. That's about whatever you're going to get. So we push the limits with design, finishes, door styles, how custom you can get, organization, really maximizing functionality in the space. And in a lot of older homes that get remodeled that weren't meant for open concept or whatever it may be, you have to get pretty creative on how to maximize the cabinetry in that space. And we're a little different because we make it from raw materials right here in our shop.
Okay, so you make it. Do you install it as well, or do you subcontract that out?
We subcontract it out. We do have a presence outside of our area, so we just ship them out sometimes and coordinate with the GCs to get them installed.
How long have you had the business?
Business in a couple months here will be exactly 8 years old. Wow. So coming up on 10 years, which is cool.
Did you start it from scratch? Did you buy it? How did you get into it?
So, it's funny. I'm like getting on Twitter. I'm actually very fascinated by everybody who buys and builds businesses. And, I started this business out of a one-car garage when I was 24. And I've had the business itch since I was a kid. Both sides of my family full of small business owners. So never really had a regular job. I was mowing lawns and pressure washing. That was how I made it through high school. And I always had the itch, didn't really have the experience, and initially didn't know where to apply that itch and that interest in business. Woodworking's always been a hobby. So started out of a one-car garage 8 years ago, which started as cutting boards. I had table saw and a couple machines and tools, and that didn't pay the bills for very long. So I had to figure out how to take it to the next level. But we've come a long way, but it's definitely been humble beginnings for sure.
Okay, so you started this from scratch. How did you decide to manufacture it domestically? Because at least from what I've seen, it seems like a lot of people are going and they'll have it manufactured obviously overseas because it's cheaper and then they'll do the install. Is it common to build domestically, or what you do, is it fairly uncommon?
I think at our scale, and we're growing, so we're about to have 10 people here. Shop is 7,500 square feet. We're at maxed out in our shop right now. We need to move soon, but it's uncommon in the sense that it's very capex heavy business. It's a ton of equipment. All that equipment needs a ton of power. Like even just in our small shop, there's $50,000 in just electrical build out just to get stuff under power.
Wow.
I think ignorance is bliss, right? So when I was going from cutting boards, there was a little pit stop for a few years in doing custom furniture. We did a lot of bars and restaurants and commercial stuff. That's a tough business. 4 or 5 years ago, we switched to cabinetry, which is much more of a legitimate production, but we didn't know the kind of equipment needed, the space. We didn't know anything about production systems and flow and all this stuff. And so I think we got into this because we were coming from more of this like maker mindset, because we did handcrafted furniture for 5 years and we didn't really know any other way but to make the things that we sold. And I think you can scale more quickly by outsourcing and just selling or being a dealer like your general contractor or builder would be. But you're very limited because you can't. I learned that to grow a business successfully, gain a reputation, have some good word of mouth spread in your favor, you need to solve problems for customers. And becoming another company that just bought and sold imported cabinetry, we weren't going to gain any traction. That's also just a race to the bottom on price too, because
Yeah.
everybody is your competitor.
So for you, who is your ideal customer?
So that's evolved a little bit over the last couple of years as we were learning how to manufacture cabinets. That came with a lot of engineering and production challenges that we were head down and let's figure out how to make this work mode. And we thought that we needed to work with trade professionals, builders, interior designers, maybe architects, because they're more educated in general on how custom cabinetry fits into a space.
Sure.
We learned that there's a lot of gaps in that because people driving designs or decisions, they weren't the ones making the cabinet. So there was always some sort of gap in information and what was feasible and what wasn't. So more recently now, I'm really going as a business owner. I'm really diving headfirst into delegating and figuring out how to scale the business through other people. We've hired our own designer internally. So it's to answer your question, it's pretty much anybody who wants custom cabinetry that would be out of our product line or our catalogs. And we have the ability to guide the process in decision making, produce the drawings that you would approve as the client, get them manufactured and get them delivered. So we're in the process of really defining how we operate. And it could be homeowner, builder, or designer.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go is, are you doing individual kitchen cabinets? Are you going commercial? I don't know, big commercial projects where you're doing kitchen installs? Like what? I don't even know how to segment the market that you would be serving to. But like the end user of the cabinets, who are they typically?
It would be homeowners. So we are focusing on residential, a little bit higher end residential remodels and new construction. Commercial is, which we learned this when we were doing commercial furniture, it's just its own beast. There's such a hierarchy of decision makers, and I always joke that it's amazing that anything ever gets built in the commercial world because it's budgets get blown, timelines are 12 months later than you thought. There's 6 people trying to make the same decision, and the sales numbers are big. I mean, you might have a 6-7 figure project, like project revenue on average, but it's a nightmare to get those done.
So it's interesting to hear you explain it because I would just think that they're all the same, right? Like,
Right.
oh, we do cabinets, but you've broken it out between the design process, right? Which is maybe the builder or the architect or the designer. And then you have the manufacturing, the creation of the cabinetry, and then you have the install, which seem to be 3 separate phases. Your company has started, hey, we're just focused on creating the cabinets. It looks like now instead of going downstream to the install, you're actually going upstream by bringing the design in-house. Walk me through that decision. Why not bring the install in-house? Why did you decide to bring the design in-house?
So for the last 4 years, we've had a subcontracted installer that we manage. We always viewed him in that process as something in-house, but he wasn't, he wasn't on payroll.
Mm-hmm.
And so we learned from, I think, just kind of cutting our teeth on accepting projects. The way that we grow and the way we learn is a little bit trial by fire, but we're going to accept a project that we've bid on, even if we don't fully know how to do some elements in that project. Like our first ever cabinetry job was like a $40,000 or $50,000 kitchen that was high gloss white, walnut, natural walnut, very custom, very high end. And we had no clue how to do it. And I had no business bidding 50 grand for that, but we did it. And the reason that we're confident in doing that is because we're confident problem solvers. Now we're just going to, even if we got to go 100-hour weeks for 6 straight weeks, which we did in that time, we're going to figure it out and make sure it's solid. And so that's just how you learn. That's how you grow. But we learned that in that process and making a lot of mistakes, and I call it failing forward. You make a ton of incremental mistakes and you learn from those. We found that almost all of our problems were traced back to poor guidance during the design phase, which in our world is really the sales process. So let's just say if you're building a home or you're renovating your kitchen, there's a lot of decision making that goes into that before any contractor can come on site and start working, because they need to know what are your selections, what's your tile, what's your flooring, all that kind of stuff. It's no different with cabinetry. So we're now blending design. We take a deposit, we hash out all of the selections and the final details. Then you get your final price, because now we've isolated all the variables. Then we send it to production, and then the next element will be bringing in install in-house, most likely later this year.
Walk me through the economics, because I'm still trying to wrap my mind around why you decided to manufacture versus just install. Because I'm looking at how you started, and it makes total sense to me. My brother-in-law makes cabinets, and he used to install cabinets. He now works in a different field, but you get good at something, people start contacting you, you get more business than you can handle, you start to grow. And it makes sense to me that, hey, I used to make cabinets, now I custom order them from China and I install them because you can do more and it's less overhead, less CapEx. But if I were to compare the two business models, that first one, right, which is basically you turn into an installer, and then this one where you're actually doing the manufacturing, is it more profitable to do the manufacturing, or what would be the economic incentive for you to do the manufacturing versus just growing an install company that uses China?
Just basically flipping product at that point. Yeah. I think so. We entered the cabinetry world literally, I think 30 days after COVID hit. And so we tried to outsource. It's funny. In hindsight, COVID was actually the best thing that ever happened to the business, because furniture was really difficult. And everybody, 2020 and beyond, was renovating or building houses, and it was insane. For the first year of us doing cabinetry, our website said we still did furniture, and people would just come to us hoping that we would, because lead times were 6 months. It was crazy.
Okay. So for the first year, you quote unquote only did furniture. You didn't do cabinetry. What did you do in revenue that year?
So I don't think we had ever done more than 450 or 500, maybe max, going into 2020. And then if you go from maybe April, May 2020 to 12 months following until 2021, I think we did 800. It was 100%, almost year over year gain, which breaks a lot of things, right? We didn't have processes. There's no systems. People are undertrained. I'm learning now. So we approach the business and our brand is adding value to solve problems for our customers versus just being another person that flips cabinets. So the reason we don't outsource is we do a lot of more modern, frameless, sometimes referred to European cabinetry. That's not something that's easily outsourced, because a lot of more traditional manufacturers don't make cabinets that way. There's a lot of door styles or finishes, integrated lighting. If you've ever seen pocket doors that open up and retract back, people have coffee bars in there. That's just not, those are hard details to convey to another shop that has their own way of making things. And again, if we're choosing from a manufacturer's catalog, we're going to be limited ourselves, and there's limited opportunity to differentiate. So the economic side of it, really difficult to make money. I'm learning under the $1.5 million, $2 million a year mark. We are going to do about that this year. And we're pretty debt heavy to get to that level. After crunching the numbers, that $3 to $5 million a year mark is when you scale enough to really maximize the output of your equipment. and then you start printing cash. And it's not crazy, but you should be able, in a higher end custom shop, you should be able to put away 20% at the end of the year, like in the bank cash flow.
Yeah, because I mean, as I'm 20%, you said, as I'm thinking about it, if you're just sort of that general contractor who installs any and all cabinets and you're in a 50-mile radius, you have a lot of work, right? Because the styles may differ and the preferences may differ, but you're just everything to everybody. But what you're saying is you're niching down, and because you've niched down, you have to go outside of just that 50-mile radius of where you could physically drive to. And it sounds like you're starting to ship cabinets. But in order to do that, you've got to make some big capital investments to be able to churn the volume out necessary in order to get the revenue. So it is a different business model. I don't know. I mean, obviously you've said that the latter is better, but for you, are you focusing on now, like is the goal to start shipping this nationally or to maximize your SEO? How are you thinking about growth in the cabinetry manufacturing space as opposed to just like we're going to come in and install cabinets right in a kitchen remodel?
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting because cabinetry is a bit of this hybrid element of the scope of a new build or something, or renovation, where you're viewed as both. I guess there's three parts. You're viewed as like a vendor because you're providing something to get installed into the house, much like the tile vendor would,
Yeah.
or lighting or somebody. You're also, if you install, you're viewed as a contractor because you have an on-site presence to install the cabinets, but you're also manufacturing. So now you're kind of like the three parts of the supply chain all in one business. And you
Yep.
can certainly stay local and stay busy and not get too sophisticated with your operation and the business in general, and be a little bit more of just the cabinet maker in the town that you have your business in. I'm a business person first, woodworker second. So to me, I wanted to scale a legitimate manufacturing company and design our processes to where, whether you're local to us or in California, which we have a full house in the Bay Area going on right now that we're going to ship out. Our process of intake, design, sales, engineering, manufacturing, it doesn't matter where you are in the lower 48, it's the same process. And so if we design that, the one caveat to that would be if you're local, there would be an installation part of our scope, but that's about the only difference.
Why not systematize it, be very clear on how you build things, and then outsource it to China? Go to a factory, go over there, go to Shenzhen, and tell them exactly the specs that you want and have them only manufacture your stuff. Why manufacture in the United States when it seems so much more expensive to do?
I guess without getting in the weeds of all the different custom elements we do, it'd be very difficult to convey the details, the tolerances, the quality that really makes us different from the people who import. A big challenge with cabinetry is, and cost, is shipping, right? Even if you flat pack them, it's a ton of parts, a lot of components. If there's damage, it's not just something you can quickly get from China, even if it's locally.
Yeah.
We found, at least what works for us is retaining and as much control as we can of the process. Because if something happens
Okay.
or something gets damaged, then we can't
So
just call China.
to you, it's a quality assurance piece. To you, it's like, hey, we want to maintain control of the quality of the process. We don't care. We would sacrifice quality for price, and then at that point, we're just competing with big box cabinetry makers.
Which
Okay,
at that point you talk about, for me, 3 to 5 million is the sweet spot right now that we're targeting.
mhm.
You'd have to do 30 to 50 million with that business model. It's crazy scale to make because the margin's a lot lower. You right now, what's a container? $10,000-15,000 a container to get it overseas, and cabinets are bulky. It all costs money and time.
How are you acquiring customers right now?
We have, I think, been very fortunate in the sense, so active on social media. It's pretty much all been organic. I haven't paid more than maybe 200-300 bucks in any sort of Google ads or anything in 8 years in business. It's all
Wow.
been, so like my version of cold calling or cold outreach is really just sliding into people's DMs, whether it be Instagram or I would actually say primarily Instagram. That's where the whole
Why? Why don't you spend more money on marketing? It seems to me, well, maybe it's a capacity issue, I guess. Do you have the capacity to handle a flood of demand?
We've been growing. If you were to average it over 8 years, we've been growing consistently 50% year over year for 8 years.
Oh my
And
gosh.
you can imagine that, every year is this, like, I call them glass ceilings. So like every year is this glass ceiling we're breaking through. But, my business partner and I are like, is there ever going to be a year that we're not doing this and seriously expanding? And so there's just been no problem with sales. We've been doing it long enough now where there's now word of mouth starting to gain traction. So, what's nice is the trade professional side of the industry has started turning into repeat business. We've connected with some designers where we might do half a dozen projects with them a year. Somebody does their kitchen and you think a homeowner, well, how often would they redo their kitchen? Once every 20 years or something? Well, they redo their kitchen. They have family and friends over, weekends, holidays, whatever. That's an opportunity for exposure for us, because going back to the quality side of it, it's so different from what people are used to from that typical imported Home Depot route that people are blown away, and you can't not talk about it, which is great.
It shocks me because I think that your business benefits from a couple of big tailwinds. One is Instagram and social media, right? Where it's like, hey, look at this picture, the kitchen before and after looks amazing, and people click on that. I think you could draw a lot of eyeballs and you've posted some pictures of before and after, and they're just beautiful. And then there's also this trend of people want to buy domestic. They look at it and they're like, hey, we want to support domestic manufacturers because they've been hollowed out. To me, I would think, man, throw gasoline on the fire, just start marketing pay-per-click at all these other places. But if you can't handle the capacity, what's the point? Like, you don't want to just.
Yeah, it's kind of like our greatest strength is also a weakness right now, where because we control the quality in the process, the end result is typically a much greater premium, and just in terms of quality, and just the fit and finish of everything is not something you can get, going down the street, your local big box store. However, because of that, we can't just take it. We can't go from 100 customers one year or 100 projects to 500 projects, because that takes 3 times the space, another $1 million in equipment, tripling payroll. Things move a little bit slower as a manufacturer, but we can also do things. If I see something on Pinterest or some sort of trend or something on Instagram that I really like that people are going nuts over, typically within 2 weeks, we can figure it out, prototype it, engineer it, and say, hey, we do this now. So we can evolve and adapt quickly and offer things that if somebody saw something on a show on HGTV a month ago, we can figure out how to do it within a reasonable amount of time. And if you go to Home Depot, they say, sorry, we don't do that.
What's your average ticket price? Like, what's your average, I don't know, revenue per customer?
It ranges, it's pretty broad. I would say if we were to average it out, I think it's a 35,000 per project.
Wow.
We have a $300,000 house that we're doing right now locally. And we also do $12,000, $15,000 built-ins for your fireplace or something.
Have you ever made trapdoors, secret doors, not escape rooms, panic room? Like, have you ever built anything crazy cool?
We haven't done the thing where it's like the bookcase flips into the wall and then you walk into like a speakeasy, but we've done a lot. And this is a trend right now. This is an example of figuring out something on the fly. Right now, it's really big to have your whole kitchen, and then you have a big wall of tall cabinets, maybe your refrigerator's integrated into there, and then your pantry cabinet opens up, and it's actually just a pass-through into a walk-in pantry room. So we've done a lot of, it looks like there's 3 drawers and 2 doors above it, but you open it up as a single door, and then you like walk into your butler's pantry is what they call it. So we've done some cool things like that. Yeah.
All right, so $35,000 per customer. That's incredible. That's very high ticket. What do your margins look like on a per customer basis?
Everything's been reinvested. I'd say right now it's a low 10, 12% is probably what we're keeping, purely because of what we've invested to scale the business and keep moving forward. Like I mentioned, that $3+ million mark consistently generate 20% net margins, maybe 25.
Your customer acquisition costs are basically nothing right now. $35,000 per customer, you're netting around 10%, depending. What does your cash conversion cycle look like? So if I'm a customer and I'm like, Alex, I love these cabinets, here's what I want, how do you get paid?
Yeah, so it's a little bit slow because it is custom and everything's made to order. There's right now a little bit because of capacity and demand, but right now we're about 12 weeks. So if you said you wanted a new kitchen today, we're probably delivering that in September. And so we'll take a small deposit typically 3 to 5 grand. That allows us to really dive in and figure out what is the design of the whole space and the cabinets that we're going to be making. When we finalize that may take, it's as fast as that back and forth moves, but a couple weeks, we take let's say we finalize it 2 to 3 weeks, 50% production deposit around day 30 of the project, 50% of whatever it is. So if it's 35 grand, 16, 17 grand. And then 8 weeks later, once the cabinets are ready to deliver, we would take the last 50% of production. So I'd say right now it's a little long. It's like 8 to 10 weeks. So we're always overlapping projects to keep it evening out.
What is your gross margin on those cabinets?
So we're targeting, we're about 40% gross.
Okay, because I'm just doing the math in my head, right? If you've got $36,000 or $35,000 order, and your gross margin on that is, let's say, 15,000. If that's 40%, I'm just like ballparking. I'm not sure if that's accurate. But you're going to make $15,000 on that. That means it costs you $20,000 to create the cabinets. But you're only taking a 50% deposit, so $16,000, $17,000. There's a gap there. There's a gap of $3,000 or $4,000. Are you fronting that?
What bridges the gaps are essentially terms of payment with vendors. If we have, most of the times it's net 30. So the way you sign off on the drawings, which finalizes the order and place. So it's a little bit more. You have 50% production plus that design retainer we took. So we might have 60% of the cash before we ever have to order anything.
Sure.
And so we also don't just stock a ton of material and inventory. We order per job once we have the cash to cover all the material and most of the labor. And then once we get the material, most projects turn around in about 2 weeks. So we're able to bill about 3 or 4 weeks after. But yeah, I mean, things are a little tight. We're trying to improve our process to lower our cash conversion cycle, obviously. And that's just something we're learning how to do with all the mix of projects we have.
Yeah, I think for anybody listening, that what you're describing right there, especially as you're trying to grow, is very, very difficult. It's very difficult.
It's stressful. A lot of sleepless nights for sure.
I bet, man. All right. I have some rapid fire questions for you.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, actually, before I do that, give me a size of scope. You said it earlier. You said you're hoping to do $2 to $3 million this year in revenue?
This year will be 1.5 to 2.
Okay, 1.5 to 2. And how many employees do you have?
Currently 8 full-time, 1 part-time. We're likely adding a 10th person here in the next couple of months.
Okay, awesome. What do you love about this business?
I love the challenge. What drew me to it in the first place was just like how tangible it is, right? There's something about taking raw material, making something that you designed, seeing the end result, and then especially seeing it in a beautiful house that just got renovated or built. That never gets old.
What do you hate about it?
I'd say the cash conversion cycles. Cash flow has been tough. I think there's a way that we can improve it, but it's taken a lot of years for me to learn how to get there with the broad mix that we do.
True. You know, we're all jealous when you're on the other side of things. And as you sit here as a business owner in the space that you're in, what industries are you jealous of right now?
Yeah, I listened to Alex Nelson with the wedding venue. I find like the mix of real estate and hospitality without going to a hotel. I find that business really interesting because it's higher value than just renting out a warehouse, although I do love industrial real estate. That might be the second part to that. But I think rental space, stuff like that's really interesting to me.
If you had 2 hours in your day, you have a family, right? You're married, kids, you're busy, you've got a business. You have 2 hours in your day. You don't have any work, no family responsibilities. What are you obsessed with right now? What are you doing? What are you thinking about? What's like on your mind that you're really curious to learn about or do?
So on a regular, it's probably 2 parts from like business wise. It's just how to make this business better. We're big on continuous improvement. I'm obsessed with that in every realm of anything that can be improved. We're trying to figure that out. On the personal side, I've been really trying to pursue general aviation and get private pilot's license and
Really?
Yeah, figure out how to get a plane one day, or maybe rent for the time being. Aviation has always really interested me.
That's awesome. So you're getting your hours in right now, or what are you doing?
No, not quite. So I had studied for the exam. We had our daughter last year, which was like timed up with when I was supposed to take it. here we are already a year later, and I got to get back into it. So I'm
All
getting there
right.
though.
All right. You're busy running a business, new baby. It's a lot. All right. My last question. You are, if memory serves, 32,
31, yeah.
31. What advice would you give yourself 10 years ago?
I would say, I could have done a little bit more planning analysis. I could have gained some experience before I just dove in head first. But there's some beauty in just like saying yes to something and trusting your gut to figure it out later. And I would say
Mm,
learn how to delegate sooner, learn what that means, how to hire people, how to train people and lead other people. It took me a while to figure out how to get over that like micromanagement, control. I'm the business owner, my way or the highway, or just if you want to do something right, you got to do it yourself. That took me a while to get out of that mentality. So I'm learning it now, but I think it's cost a couple of years of growing the business.
that's good advice. All right. Well, Alex, where can people find you? What's the name of your company?
So company is Lane 17 Cabinet Co. That could be Instagram or Twitter, or personally on Twitter, Alex Forbes.
Awesome. Well, it was a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for taking time, and we'll talk soon. All right. What a great conversation with Alex. You can tell that I know nothing, and I'm pretty useless when it comes to working with my hands, but I think his business is really fascinating. And the conversation honestly brought up something that I wanted to end the episode today on, which is the cash conversion cycle. Now, some of you may have heard of this and maybe asking yourselves, well, what is the cash conversion cycle? It's pretty simple. The cash conversion cycle is the time between providing a service or a product and when you get paid. So I'll give you a simple example. McDonald's. When you go to McDonald's and you buy a burger and you eat it right away, what do? You pay at the register. McDonald's doesn't wait to collect. So their cash conversion cycle is 0 days. They get paid right away at the point of sale. Now, there are some companies that have a negative cash conversion cycle. Think of hospitality. If you book a flight or if you book a hotel, what do? You pay up front, and then several weeks or months later, you go and enjoy your stay at that hotel. Well, the hotel gets that money up front without providing the service. So there's a lag of, let's say, 30 days in between them getting paid and when they have to provide the service. That's a negative cash conversion cycle. So they actually have more cash on hand than when they're providing the services. And then for many businesses, they have a positive cash conversion cycle. So healthcare, for example, when you go to a physician's office and you're seen for a visit, at the end of the visit, they'll give you a bill or they'll send you a bill in the mail. And it'll typically be between 30 and 60 days before that physician or that hospital will be paid for the services that they provided at that visit. So what that does is, for growing companies, this can create a lot of problems. Not for that necessarily the negative cash conversion companies, because they have some cash to play with, and not totally, although there are some problems for the companies like McDonald's who have no cash conversion cycle. Their cash is just converted right away. But for companies like Alex's company, his cabinetry company, having a cash conversion cycle be 30 or 60 days is very, very difficult when it comes to growth. So I'm going to stick with the healthcare example and kind of model out why it's a problem. Let's say I'm a healthcare company and I have 10 employees and 10 patients. I'm just going to use easy numbers. These don't actually translate in the real world, but for illustrative purposes, stick with me here. I'm a healthcare company. I have 10 patients and I have 10 employees. The 10 patients that I have bring me $15,000 a month in revenue. The 10 employees that I have cost me $10,000 a month in revenue, in expenses. So at the end of the month, I net out $5,000 ahead. It's fantastic. Well, one day someone comes, knocks on my door and says, we have 10 patients who we'd like you to take care of. Oh, and in case you can't take care of them with your current staff, we've also got 10 employees who you can hire right now to take care of these patients. You're excited, right? Oh my gosh, my revenue just went from $15,000 a month to $30,000 a month. And my expenses went from $10,000 a month to $20,000 a month. I'm now netting $10,000 a month. Not exactly, because of the cash conversion cycle. What actually happens is, month one of bringing on those new patients, you've now got 20 employees. You're paying $20,000 a month. But there's 60 days in between when you provide the service in healthcare and when you get paid. So for that first month, you don't get any revenue. You get no cash paid to you, but you still have to pay out your employees. What are you going to do? Are you going to go talk to your employee and say, hey, look, I'll pay you in 60 days? No, employees expect to be paid in the cadence with which you've articulated to them. So for that first month, you've got to float the additional $10,000 in cost. So what does that look like? You've got $15,000 coming in from the original patients, but now you're paying out $20,000 to your new employees. So you're actually losing $5,000 a month in cash. Month two comes. You provide the same services. You're still not paid because you don't get paid until the end of the 60 days. And so you, again, bring in 15,000, but you're giving out 20,000. So you've lost another $5,000. Now in month three, you finally get that additional $15,000. And so you've got $30,000 coming in and $20,000 coming out. So in month three, essentially you break even. You get the $10,000 that you invested in order to handle that growth. Now, if you don't understand the cash conversion cycle, you would think, oh yeah, bring on as many patients as I can handle. But that costs money. There is capital involved in being able to grow. And that's what Alex is running into with his cabinetry company. He has more demand than he knows how to handle. But in order to make those cabinets, in order to fulfill those projects, he's got to invest in new machinery. He's got to invest in raw materials. He's got to invest in new employees and train them. And so he can't just grow 200% every single year. He doesn't have the money or the capital to do that. And unless he goes and gets an outside investment, unless he goes and gets a line of credit, or unless he goes and takes out a lot of debt, he's not going to be able to grow at that pace for forever. And so companies that are growing quickly and have a positive cash conversion cycle are under a significant amount of stress because they're constantly playing the cash game. They're constantly trying to figure out, how much cash do I have? Which vendors can I play? They're playing games with their vendors of, when do I pay them? Is it net 30? Is it net 60? Can I push out payment terms? Can I get payment up front for some of these projects, right? Like they're constantly trying to figure out how to balance their cash. And so I think for anybody who's listening and looking at these businesses, understanding the cash conversion cycle is one of the most important things that people do not talk about. Make sure you have a clear grasp of how your business collects cash before either you get into it or before you decide to expand, because that is going to impact how expensive it will be to grow. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but as you understand the cash conversion cycle, this will make more and more sense. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you learned something. If you did, I'd love to hear about it. Comment, write me an email, nick@cofounders.com. And remember, always ask questions. There is no such thing as a dumb question. There are only dumb people who are unwilling to ask the dumb questions. I'll see you next time.